So, over the past few weeks, I've been talking about rent, I've been talking about food shortages, I've been talking about a potential recession. I've also dove into the chances of seeing additional inflation. Well, what we are hearing now is we are 3 months away from possible disaster. And I want to address what's going on, but first, I want to talk about what President Biden said today. Because the first thing that President Biden said is his first and top priority is to tackle inflation. That's his goal. Well, inflation is something that we've been seeing for quite some time. Well, President Biden said today that inflation is actually only caused by two things. The first is the recent pandemic, which caused supply chain issues. The second thing is Vladimir Putin and Russia's invasion into Ukraine. Those are the two things that he said caused inflation. He didn't mention all the stimulus that the Biden administration and the Trump administration both passed. He didn't talk about that. He didn't talk about all the additional spending that Congress has done over the past few years. He didn't address that. He didn't talk about not producing more oil here at home. And he didn't talk about the things that his administration has done wrong over the past year. But what he did say, he made it very clear. Passing his Build Back Better Act would actually help bring down inflation. So his thinking is for Congress to spend more money is going to help bring down inflation. However, economists predict that passing the Build Back Better Act would not lower inflation. It would help out the American people. Okay, don't get me wrong. Helping versus lowering inflation are two separate things. Here's why. It would simply reduce the financial burden that millions and millions of Americans have in the short term because they would get additional money. It wouldn't be a stimulus check. No. We could see affordable housing. We could potentially see child tax credit payments come back. I don't think a stimulus check will be added. We could see things for prescription drug costs getting reduced. We could see more benefits going to people on Social Security and Medicare, right? We could see those things. That's why economists predict that passing the Build Back Better Act is not going to lower inflation, but in the short term, it could help. So here's the reason why President Biden really is pushing for this. If President Biden can get, and Democrats, as a whole, can get the Build Back Better Act passed, we are going to see additional inflation. That's going to happen. But the difference is it would most likely come a few months after, about 3 to 6 months after we see the Build Back Better Act pass. Well, if Democrats can kind of rework the bill and get this to eventually pass, well, at least what the reports are saying is they're discussing potentially passing this the 1st of July. Well, if you pass in July, let's say it takes 3 months before we start to see inflation. That takes us into August, September, October. So the hope is that, according to Democrats, that they wouldn't see additional inflation until after the midterm elections, which would mean they would hopefully win the midterm elections. They would remain in control of the House and the Senate, and then hopefully for them, they would get additional seats in the Senate. They can pass whatever bill they want and not have to worry about Senator Joe Manchin or Senator Kyrsten Sinema. Now, again, a lot of issues here, and it's all coming down to what happens right before the election. Now, the big takeaway from what President Biden said today is that his economic agenda would work to combat inflation. He wants to simply tax the rich because he says they can afford it. And then he wants to take that money, push it towards the American people through tax cuts, climate spending, lowering prescription drug costs, and eliminating student debt of up to $10,000 per borrower. This is where many are saying it will be a disaster. Here's why. Experts are saying that the Build Back Better Act and passing or forgiving student loan debt is not the greatest option. Economists, though, they predict that canceling student debt will lead to more inflation. People will then have more money to spend on the things that they can't afford right now, and canceling up to $10,000 per borrower would actually eliminate $321 billion in student debt. And the Biden administration stated just a couple weeks ago that they are going to have answers within the next few weeks. So we could know any day now how much money is going to be forgiven, who's going to qualify, and when this would go into effect. So things are going to happen, but when they actually happen, we don't know. And we also know that come September 1st, 2022, the student loan payment pause is going to expire, meaning borrowers must begin paying back their loans once again if President Biden does not come out and forgive up to $10,000 in student debt. Well, this is why many believe canceling student loans would cause additional inflation. The average borrower pays about $400 per month in student loans. That's an issue, because if you take that $400, okay, let's say we got millions and millions of borrowers, but let's say we take $321 billion and just give it away to the American people as almost a stimulus, which it technically is a stimulus, but it's not an actual stimulus check, right? What if we were to give away $321 billion to the American people in a stimulus check? What would that do? It would cause additional inflation. This is why so many people are saying that we have to move away from this. We cannot forgive student loan debt. We are 3 months away, technically like 3.5 months away from a potential disaster, all because President Biden made this promise. He also made a promise to provide people on Social Security with $200 per month. He didn't fulfill that promise. He also made a promise that anybody making less than $400,000 per year would not see a penny more in taxes. Technically, he's followed through with that, but people are paying more because of inflation. And then the other promise, he promised multiple times he would not open new drilling here on U.S. soil, on federal land. Well, he did that, and he did that right before Easter. So there's a lot of issues. But what is going to happen if people have more money and they can go and spend that money? Unless the Federal Reserve can get inflation down quickly before September 1st, we're likely going to see additional inflation for 3 to 6 months after the student loan payments are done, right? Where student loans are forgiven of up to $10,000. This is going to be crazy what we see. Some are saying right now that we are, even though the expectation for tomorrow, for May 11th, that's when we're going to see the new CPI data. Well, here's the problem. If it comes out tomorrow and it's too high, it's over 8.1 or definitely over 8.5%, it's the top headline number, that's going to create issues. People are going to be scared to go and spend more money. But this will also ramp up efforts to forgive student loan debt. Because if that's the only form of stimulus, the only form of relief that the Biden administration can provide to the American people, according to reports, he's going to do it. So, the expectation is inflation is going to continue to go up, all because of student loan debt. Okay? Here's the other thing. We are also seeing inflation come down at this point. According to Neil Kashkari, one of the Fed presidents today, he made it sound like, yes, inflation is already coming down. Slowly, but it's coming down. But here's the other issue. If China stays locked down and Russia doesn't pull out of Ukraine, these are going to further create additional supply chain shortages. This is not something that will get fixed overnight. And so that's the other issue, is that continues to put upward pressure on inflation. Again, if we see inflation go up and we are not at 8.1% tomorrow, that's going to put more pressure on the Biden administration and President Biden himself to forgive student loan debt. Again, that's going to cause additional inflation. But President Biden also mentioned today that he is discussing the possibilities of reversing Trump's tariffs on China. Some say that is a good move, that would help lower the cost to the American people, and it would. That's not a lie. The problem is, if we lower tariffs on China, the issue is American-made products now seem more expensive. And I can tell you right now, when I walk into a store and I see item A and item B, it doesn't matter who made it, but if item A is more expensive than item B, chances are I'm going to buy item B. Okay? If this is something like ketchup, I'll probably buy the cheaper option, because to me it doesn't make any difference. The taste I can't tell, right? And so that's the issue. If it's not something like a computer or a car or a watch or whatever, I'm probably going to go with the cheaper option, not the best option or the biggest brand. And that's kind of what we're going to deal with if President Biden reverses the Trump tariffs on China. So again, this could cause additional inflation and hurt the American-made products and the American people, as opposed to hurting China and helping people here within our borders. And here's the next thing. This is something that a lot of people are not talking about. And it's at the end of summer. This is what we've seen over the past 2 years. At the end of summer, right before weather turns and gets a little bit colder, we start to see an increase in COVID cases. They surge again. Well, what happens when COVID cases come back? The expectation is employees who have to call in sick are going to cause the business to close down, not permanently, but temporarily. And if businesses are closed down, people cannot work, right? Customers cannot go and spend money. We could go into a recession. If we go into a recession, and again, with inflation where it's at, we could go into something called stagflation. Again, this is going to hurt millions and millions of Americans. This is actually going to further exacerbate the shortages. So that's the problem there, is all these different issues are going to combine. They're going to compound. They're going to get worse. And that's the problem. We could potentially be 3 months away from a major disaster. And again, nobody's talking about all the things combining and making a super crisis. Everyone's like, oh, we got a little bit of a food shortage. Okay, let's deal with that. We got a supply chain issue. Well, we'll deal with that. Oh, we got worker shortages over there. Well, we can deal with that. Oh, but we got inflation, right? We got stocks selling off, crypto selling off, real estate's coming down in price. And as real estate comes down, let me just paint this picture, because this is another disaster, and I'll address this in another video, and this piles on to inflation. With inflation going up, with the Federal Reserve raising rates, what's happening is people cannot afford the homes that they used to think they could afford. And so as they're going in to buy a home, and they're like, oh, I got to spend $4,000 on that house? No, thank you. I'm not going to buy that because, well, for one, I can't afford it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and rent. That's the better option. Well, guess what's happening now? Landlords, and again, we do not have rent control in every single state and city. So what landlords are doing, they're understanding the power that they have. They're understanding the leverage that they now hold. That having a rental, they can go and request almost whatever they want, because they're still going to get a handful of people looking to rent that piece of property, simply because that person cannot afford to buy a house. They don't have money saved up for a down payment. They cannot pay for closing costs. They cannot pay to fix it up if they need to. They can't do any of that. But what they can do is they can put down a first and last month deposit for your apartment. And so guess what? They may not be able to afford $3,000 or $4,000 for a house, but maybe they can scrape together about $3,500 for an apartment that is really worth maybe $2,000 to $2,500. Yeah, that's what we're seeing. And again, as rates go up, if home prices don't come down quickly, what's going to happen is people will not be able to afford to buy their own house, but they will be forced to rent. And if landlords have the leverage, guess what they're going to do? They're going to make you sign on to a 1-year lease. You're going to have to put first, last, and a security deposit, right? All those things, a bunch of money. And guess what? You'll be locked into that home for the next year. So there's a lot of disasters coming. I just want to warn you that these things are going to happen. I will prepare you along the way, but just understand this is going to get worse before it ever gets better. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please ask your questions down in the comment section below. Again, just want to thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next.